What did you and your family think about President Roosevelt at the time of the Depression?
We lived in a Republican community. Just about everybody was Republican in central Kansas. My uncle was a judge who claimed that he was Republican and strong as horseradish. So we grew up believing that the Republicans were the right people, the right party. But we lost confidence in Hoover, the last Republican president, and when Roosevelt became president and started the policies that eventually did turn the Depression around, my family became Democrats, and we've been Democrats ever since. Roosevelt was a hero to us and to most of the people who had suffered during the Depression.
So what was you and your family's opinion of the New Deal and its policy?
Well, there were good things and bad things about it. The good things is that eventually it turned around the policies that had led to the Depression. But as I mentioned, a lot of people didn't like the government programs, the WPA and the CCC. They thought that was a handout. They thought it was it catered to people who couldn't make it on their own. And so we took great pride in never going on government assistance. And even people who were sympathetic to Roosevelt believed that some of the programs were unnecessary and probably not very wise. But it really took all of these programs to shift public opinion so the Depression could be outrun.
So were you or anyone you knew helped significantly by the New Deal?
Yes, quite poignantly. When 1939 came, we had finally given up both on the farm, although it still remained in the family, and the house in town and the house moving business. So several people, including the family down the street, the father went to Washington and found a job in the apple orchards, picking apples. And they wrote back, and we heard about it. And so my dad went to Washington too, got a job in the apples and fighting forest fire. I remember vividly he was talking about a state patrolman who walked down the highway at night when he was out fighting forest fire, and he said his cork boots struck fire from the pavement when he walked. He'd never seen that sort of thing in Kansas. But he got a job and sent for us, and we loaded up the few belongings that we still had and set out for the state of Washington, and found a place to live in a migrant labor camp that was one of the New Deal programs. And they had a special section of this farm labor camp that was set aside for people that had more promise, I suppose you could say. They had brand new 5-room houses that were made available to selected families. And we were chosen as one of the families to move into this brand new house with brand new furniture, the first time anything like that had ever happened to us. And that was all part of the Roosevelt New Deal program. In fact, I remember Eleanor Roosevelt, the president's wife, came through the camp one day in a limousine and just to view what was going on there, and people recognized her as the president's wife. Here was visiting this farm labor camp in the state of Washington.
So while you and your family were helped by the move west, you did know other people that had moved west and weren't so fortunate?
That weren't so fortunate.
That after they had moved west?
Um, well, it didn't solve everyone's problems, and there were people who stayed in Kansas who got jobs with the WPA and various programs, and eventually what really ended the Depression was not so much the New Deal as World War II. That was in 1941. Suddenly there were jobs everywhere when the war effort got underway, and people moved from Kansas and everywhere else to the war factories in San Francisco and Los Angeles and Chicago and wherever, got jobs making tanks and jeeps and munitions.
But you're no doubt aware of the kind of horror stories about immigrant labor from such tales as the Grapes of Wrath, of people moving from agricultural areas, from the Dust Bowl, to the west, into California or Oregon or Washington, and not being helped at all like you and your family were?
Well, there were other people. The Grapes of Wrath story is really very representative of what was going on in those times. We experienced much of what was depicted in the Grapes of Wrath. The farm labor camp I mentioned was really a whole series of one-room cabins where farm laborers lived, and there were farm laborers who'd done nothing else all their lives but pick apples and follow the crops, who really never took advantage of the New Deal programs. They just took advantage of the free housing and made a mess of the cabins they lived in, and had junk cars sitting out in front and didn't care about what was going on. I remember a big family lived right across the street from where we lived. We had one cabin. They had about 5. They had so many children. And one of the cabins, they put surplus commodities. A lot of people got welfare in the form of surplus commodities, rice and wheat and oats, and they just put it in this cabin, and it was just strung all over the floor. I couldn't imagine people living like that. We never took advantage of any of the welfare, which is commodities given out by the government, but almost everybody else in the farm labor camp did. My father also, for the first time, was involved in a labor strike. The fruit pickers decided they needed higher wages and decided to go on strike. And there were goons. That is, the companies would hire people to go around and beat up the workmen, the strikers, and force them back to work. And my dad was really frightened of what might happen when he went to work, if he went out on strike, if he picketed, or was even sympathetic with the strikers. I'm not sure what finally happened. I think maybe he quit rather than get involved in strikes and get beat up by the goons.
So back in those days, the government wasn't sympathetic with labor at all?
Well, like it is today, the government tries to balance different interests, and it really doesn't take sides until it really has to. I don't know that the government was sympathetic to one side or the other. There were a lot of strikes in Chicago and Detroit where the police were beating up on the strikers, right along with the goons, that is, hired thugs, people hired by the employers to force the laborers back to work.